Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking, and this is Overbattle, the All War. Now, if you follow my channel, if you go back to not the most recent Alaboom that was just a couple of days ago, or a day ago. It's so tough nowadays, I keep forgetting what day it is. But if you go back to like a week and a day or two ago, Rob McBride, the designer of this game, was on there, and he talked a lot about like his upbringing and the games he played when he was younger, and he talked a lot about this game as well. So I invite you to go check out that. If you don't watch the weekly show, well, whatever, you really should. I usually have Richard Ham and Scott Alden, the owner of Board Game Geek, on, and we just like to talk about life and stuff, whatever. But regardless of any of that, this is the game that Rob McBride, if you watch that, this is the game, and this is going to be a video about that game. When I was young, I grew up on lots of board games. I had the board game closet, or board game cabinet, as you will, like a lot of you probably had as well. I played a lot of different games. I played a lot of Risk when I was young. I played a lot of Clue, a lot of Careers, stuff like that. But I remember the day that I actually like saw in a catalog, a catalog, not online because it didn't exist back then. I saw the game Axis and Allies, and I knew I had to have it. It was like one of my #1 gifts I asked for Christmas, and I got it. And that, and the games that came out from that series later, Conquest of Rome, not Invasion USA, Fortress America. Invasion USA is that bad Chuck Norris movie, but Fortress America, there was Broadsides and Boarding Parties, and Shogun, which eventually got called Samurai Swords. I own a copy of Shogun. They actually called Shogun. I'm really proud of that. But anyway, regardless of any of that, those are the types of games that really kind of opened the door to other games. I started getting like into war games back then. I got into games like, I played like Supremacy. I found Talisman, found Kings and Things. Those are the types of board games I played. And like then about 12 years ago or so, I really got into the board game hobby, and that's about when I started this channel as well. But anyway, regardless of anything, this is a love letter to those old school games, but with a futurized, less downtime, more action type of mentality. Like I can remember fantastic sessions of Axis and Allies that I played with friends, but there was so much nothing going on, right? I mean, just like, okay, I'm going to take over like this one little tiny like territory in Africa. Okay, you can go ahead. And oh, I'm going to take over, you know, this one little spot up here in Russia. Okay, now you go ahead. There was, you know, and it was just this weird build up towards some giant epic monumental combat that would happen, and which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I have a lot of very fond memories of that game, and I still play it occasionally. But it definitely is showing hits long in the teeth, if you will, and it needed an update. And well, what this is, it's kind of it's set in the space, which is something I love, but it's the first game like of this type that I found that is set in space, and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed playing the epicness of it, and I enjoyed playing the really cool fourth race, the race that is, everybody knows they're going to turn on the rest of the players eventually, but at the beginning they're kind of like everybody's ally. They're this refugee race called the Cyn, CYN. They've come into the sector saying that, oh, we need help, and they've been kind of like, oh, aren't you cute? Here's this little section of this galaxy you can be in. But actually they're this like expeditionary force of this giant fleet that's coming eventually, and so the players will bide their time, and they can actually use the Cyn as to enable them to help in the battles they have with the other players, but with the knowledge that eventually the Cyn are going to show up, and they're going to become a full-fledged member of like the destruction that's going on. And it's an interesting dynamic, and it's a lot of fun playing that federation, that race in the game. But anyway, I'm going to show you how the game is played. Not really like a full game. I'm just going to kind of go over this. This is one of those games that's really easy to learn, just because everybody kind of takes the same turn. you get to move your units, you get into battles, you have secondary movement where you kind of regroup, and then you get to like put your reinforcements on the board and collect income. So I mean, and each person just kind of does that turn and takes their turn doing that, and it's a lot of fun the way it works out. So there's not going to be too much diving into like the minutia of the game, but a really good overview of how the game is played and the feel of the game as you play it. So I'm going to do that, and we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts on Overbattle, the All War. All right, like I said, I was going to go over how the feel of Overbattle, the All War is played. I'm not going to show you like all the setup or every single turn or anything like that, but what I am going to do is I'm going to just kind of give you the overview of the different mechanisms that you're going to have, and why I think all these kind of put together both have a really fun like area control type feel to it, but also that appeals to like that fantasy wargamer or sci-fi wargamer side of me that I really enjoy. I will talk in my conclusion as far as like how obviously this is a throwback in some ways, but also a very good and updated throwback, if that makes sense to you. Anyway, so when the game begins, the players will set up the board. Now, I have this awesome mat that the designer, Rob, sent me that I play on. I play this game not on this table, however. I actually am very lucky. I have like a nice 4-foot by 4-foot table in my gaming room that I play these games on. But this one, every once in a while, you get a game that it needs a little bit more area, like the board will get a little bit bigger. And so I play this actually on my dining room table because of the fact that the board is quite large. Now, you don't have to play with the giant the area, right? One of the things about this game is that it is very modular. You can kind of just throw together whatever type of gaming experience you want. I mean, you could play, like I have set up here, a 4-player game. You could definitely play a 4-player game and only use this small little map. The game would be very tight and very quick to the fights would be very quickly happen, and it would be a more violent game than one that would be kind of recessed and allow people to grow and then eventually do battle. So that's one of the things I like about it, is that it is modular, because you can definitely change things up. If you're only going to have 2 players and just have a quick little very quick and brutal combat to begin the game, or if you want to play the longer game, that's definitely an option. So what you see in front of you is these little mats here, and like there's a bunch more of these. I should mention that, like, you, depending upon like how grand or epic or small and concentrated a game session you want to have, the players will create the galaxy each time they start. There are 3, if you're playing with 3 players like this 4-player game, 3 of them will get a big old planet like you see here, and down here as well. However, the Sin, which are that really cool race that I mentioned before, they just get a little tiny, like little free moon, basically, like a rogue moon, and those are kind of a cool little astronomy thing that's real. You can dive into that if you want to. It's a pretty good Wikipedia search, if you will. But they've been gifted basically this small little moon that's allowed them to have as their base of operations. Remember, they have come to this quadrant of the galaxy with less than true purposes. They basically say they're these refugees, but in fact, actually, they are just the expeditionary force, if you will, of this larger, grander fleet that just wants to come in and destroy everything. But presently, even though you know that they will turn on you eventually in the game, there's no guarantee as to when. I'll get to that in just a little bit. But at the beginning, they are a very good ally that the players can use as a tool to help put themselves in possibly a winning situation before the Sin do their full invasion. And so you do have larger planets, like you can see, like this has more areas than, say, this one. This particular smaller sized planet only has the 5 spots, whereas this has the 2 spots in the middle, and then the concentric circles, they have another 6 around. That's good because the larger, the more stuff you control, the more resources you will get to allow you to purchase your different ground units and space units. But you run the risk of having more territory to control. So like in order to like own this planet, you have to have something in each of those locations and also defend that. Whereas, you know, if you have a smaller planet, you can use less resources to, you know, to protect and control your planet, and you can spend more on your fleets that go out. So like different sizes will have different reactions. Each player will have a moon. As you can see, they have these moons. The moons could be something where you kind of hide it back like that, to like, you know, keep it, you know, like, this gets you resources as well, but you can kind of put that into the retreat it back, so it's tougher for the players to get to kind of take it over, just, you know. Or you can have it like out front like this, and then, you know, and you're like, well, why would I want to do that? Well, each one of these like little asteroids or moons, they all have, as you can see, this kind of this orbit that's around them. And when this orbit is considered to be a space, you might have noticed that there is these like diamond shapes in all these places. And that's one of the things I really like. I really liked, like, we didn't just go with standard hexagons on this one. This is a rather unique like cube, that you can kind of see the cubes in the 3, but the rather unique diamond shape of the different areas of the board. But like, just like this moon is a location, the orbit is a location, and then when you get out these orbits, all of the spots around that are considered to be adjacent. So like, you know, this you know, this spaceship here could take off, and it could go to like any of these locations that it is attached to, that would allow them then to move around. Now, the really cool thing is that when you have these orbits that are close to each other, you can go from an orbit to an orbit, and then get like all the way to here. So like normally, like if you took off, it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get there. But you can use this orbit to kind of chain those things together and move more expediently. This is kind of like if you've seen the movie 2010, where they use the gravity of Jupiter, or I believe it was, to like slingshot them, or no, maybe they use the sun. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but the idea is similar. You're using the gravity of these stellar objects to kind of spit you out of the orbit and use that to you know, get more velocity. I'm sure somebody will tell me it was the sun. I mean, you know, they went to Jupiter. It had to be. Anyway, doesn't matter. One other thing I want to mention is that, yes, there is a rule book to this, and you can read the rules. And the rules actually have a lot of background to the world and the kind of world building that Rob McBride went through to make this game. And that's kind of a fantastic story. But each of the players actually just get these cards. And I should mention right now that this is a prototype that I was sent. Now, these 3D printed miniatures are gorgeous. I mean, so when this game is published, you can only imagine that the production models are even going to be better than what these are. But, you know, these are really fantastic. But all of these like cards basically tell you everything. There's no, in a lot of my videos I mentioned having each player being able to have like a quick little summary of the game, like a little stat sheet or a little summary of a turn or what have you, is invaluable for players to have, because then they don't have to be, you know, handing a 24, 26, 30-page rulebook back and forth looking for some obscure rule. And if you have just a quick little sheet that you can just look at and determine, it's so much better. But so you have like all these things. So like if you wanted to see like what a destroyer does, you can look right there and you can see how much it costs, what their attacks are, you know, where they can be built, and so on and so forth. And every player is going to have this. Now on the back of these, there is even a QR code there that you can use your mobile phone, your smartphone, to actually then go to the, like, it'll pull up the information off of the Overbattle website. And so if you ever want to like dive even deeper, you could definitely even use that, and there's more of an explanation than just that blurbs that everybody has on these cards. And each faction gets those cards. You can see there's a ton of these, and they can use that. All right, so The turn, like and you can see like there's the general orders is printed on the board. Once you set up the board, you will then everybody will, and I don't have like the player screens. There's a little screen that you'll keep your units behind that you purchased and what have you. You will populate the board and then you'll begin the game. Turns go rather quickly, and turn order is determined by initiative. One of the things you'll roll a 4-sided die and that'll determine who is the. Well, you can use any die, but basically you're going to use these 4-sided dice to determine like who goes first, who goes second, who goes third. The sin will always go last. So it's kind of neat when you're a sin player. You just turn that 4-sided die to 4, knowing full well that you're going to go last. Now you might be saying, well, how can somebody help? Like if you are like traveling, this destroyer is with this fleet here. Like if you move that, like what happens? Well, the sin player gets to just tag along with the movement. So if this moves to do a battle here to go fight one of these other like fleets, they'll just follow along. You don't have to wait to that turn, and that has some interesting things that happen in battles as well that sin are involved, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. During the game, when you set up, you can totally set yourself up. Blue players can totally set themselves up in locations where there's other, like other players can set up in other locations, and then battle will take place before the game even starts. Like you can actually just have that volatile combat right away. But it is like when I played this game with my friends, we tended not to do that. We didn't want to push our luck right away. We were conservative in the very beginning of the game. We wanted to maybe we would contest a planetoid or a moon or something. But for the most part, you kind of build up your forces and then you go for it. At the beginning of your turn, you have declarations, which you basically say, I'm moving this here, moving this there, and so on and so forth. And then you will do your combat movement, and then combat resolution will occur, and I'll talk about these in more detail here in just a little bit. Then you have your secondary movement, which is just the things that you moved during like after combat. You can retreat from combat possibly, or like just your moving transports from this place to another to carry troops or whatever. The secondary combat is that. Then you would look and see how much area you control, like as far as the different asteroids and planets have. You gain for each sector in each planet. You'll gain some income for controlling asteroids. You get income, and for controlling moons you get income. And then you would collect your income, and then you would do your reinforcements. The things that you purchase and put out onto the board to get yourself ready for when inevitably the other players will make their attacks. Combat is very, very straightforward. However, there is a very interesting, you might have seen this off in the side here. This board here, it's three-dimensional, but it's like you might say, well, there's no 3 dimensions in space. Well, the idea is that yes, I should say that there is no front and back in space. There's obviously 3 dimensions in space, but because this is the way this board works is you place your attacking units up on the top, you place your defending units on the bottom, and then the attacker has to make the statement of their intention to are you going to be placing your attacking units in like the back rows? You're going to put them in the middle, or and show, because it's important, because, and I'm just going to place a defender here just so you can tell, like if you want to be able to attack somebody the defender who's all the way in the back, they're going to be waiting for the attacks. You have to be in this row to be able to attack them. Same thing with the defenders. If you're defending and you want to be able to attack units that are up here, you have to move into the middle to be able to attack the units that are on the end. Attackers get a bonus if their units are here. Defenders get a bonus if they are here. So the attacker declares their intentions, and then the defender responds to that during combat. Combat is determined in classic Axis and Allies mode, where you have different attack ratings that you'll have. Battleships will, with their big guns, will hit on an 8 or less than a 12-sided. Armor, against different units of 6 or less, things like that. And you'll roll these dice and just determine attacks as you will. Usually, in most cases, The person who is defending against the hits gets to choose which units they lose in that combat. There are some exceptions as well, as that like things will get picked. Some units have like battleships or big giant space stations. They have shields. Shields can be like they'll absorb the first hit and nothing happens. Some things will be able to take a couple hits, like battleships and carriers can take a hit without being destroyed. They have to take 2 successive hits to be destroyed. If they only take 1 hit, you have to spend income to repair those units so they're at full force. But shields regenerate normally. Interesting things, like you might notice I just put these 2 little scout ships, these little fighter ships. Scouts that are by themselves or teams of 3, 3, 2, or 1, are considered to be cloaked. They cannot be seen. So you can move scouts around the board and they cannot be interacted with. Just interesting, so you can actually have a buildup of a force of those scouts to like put them in places that will allow you to kind of like say, oh, am I going to go attack over here? Because yes, there is like, I don't know they're there, but they're there, right? You have that soft blip on the radar that kind of tells you we think that there are like signatures in that area, but we don't know if they're planning on attacking. We don't know what they're going to do. So do you defend against that? Do you set up a defense against the possibility of those cloaked ships? Something that's interesting that happens. If you've played Axis and Allies, and I realize this is kind of relying on knowledge of the classic board game Axis and Allies, and I mentioned that in my introduction, a lot of this is going to feel the same. And this, obviously, and I've talked to Rob many times about like his board game background. He was on the weekly show and he talked about the games he played when he was younger. And this is kind of, in a way, a love poem to those old school Game Master series games. I mean, that's why I kind of like it a lot, because yes, it is a war game. Yes, it is a miniatures buckets of dice game, but it has expanded upon those old Axis and Allies rules and placed like the bare bones, the bare skeleton is that particular like rule. Buy your units, move your units to attack, roll a bunch of dice back and forth, bloody battles. Do you retreat? Do you attack? The luck of the dice. Like strategic movement, conversations with other players. Things like that. Because you can have multiple players. Not only the Sin can be in a spot, you can have people gather in a certain area, and there can be a big fight, and then you're going to have all the people on the side. Well, are we going to am I allied with you like this turn, just to defeat this one enemy, those sorts of things. So there definitely is like a lot of the interplay between the players as they're playing that will happen. Now, I mentioned the Sin has that very, very cool part that they start off, everybody thinks they're their friends. Everybody thinks they're these like basically, oh, aren't they cute? Kind of like, we're just allowing you this one little moon in the world. And yes, you can place your people out and we'll share spots. One thing about the Sin is if they own something all themselves, like they own this asteroid all themselves, there's no other people there. They get the full income from that location. If they are forced to share it with somebody, they'll get half income from those locations. And that can be kind of like the whole thing, oh, isn't this cute? We're allowing you to be in this universe, but you know what? You don't get all the income. We're going to share it with you, that kind of thing. So it's kind of, it's one of those things where, as the Sin player, you definitely, you're going to turn on them eventually, but because of the fact that you're kind of, being considered less, if you will, by the other players, you definitely does foster a lot of anger. and this is definitely a game of energy and a game of screaming foul vengeance against those that have wronged you, those sorts of things. So there's something said for that. But like, let's just say, for example, like there's a battle between these 2 fleets of spaceships, and this Sin is along for the ride. And let's just say, for the sake of an argument, that these, as the battle takes place, the Sin units are the last units to be destroyed in a combat. And functionally, if even though this destroyer went with this fleet to do this battle, as soon as these were to be destroyed, the Sin would immediately just switch sides. They would say, oh, okay, well, I'm now with you. And now this player would have this extra unit that would be willing, that could tag along with this fleet. And it's kind of a neat little thing where the Sin, as the game progresses, they are very, very much, they can be very, very much part of the different combats that are going on, but they never really lose anything. Yes, they have less income. They kind of feel like they're the rotten stepchild or whatever that gets the meager leavings, if you will, as the game progresses. But as these other powers battle each other and smash each other down, when the Sin eventually does change, and as the game progresses through turns, you'll actually start rolling like a die, and if it's under like I believe it is a 4 or maybe it is a 6, I can't remember, but like starting in turn 4, you will roll a die, and if it's less than that, that means the big fleet that's coming has notified the Sin. Now is the time to strike. Now is the time to mobilize and attack. And if it doesn't happen that turn, you roll again the next turn. If it doesn't happen that turn, then it just happens. So there is like a point where this game will turn on the situation, and it will begin the destruction of this section of the galaxy as this omnipresent force is coming. And then that is when it is possible the game could end. There are winning conditions that would allow the game to end before that happens. But when that happens, now it becomes an all-out, like Overbattle, the all war. It becomes all-out war. All the factions bashing on each other, trying to basically take, like, the most classic way to win is if one of these classes, one of these federations, if you will, is able to completely claim the home world of somebody and hold it, then they would win because they've shown dominance over that. And and for a while, the Sin is just along for the ride, and the Sin player kind of has to be in a situation where they don't want that to happen before they actually are able to be part of the winning team, if you will. So, I mean, there's tons of stuff that goes on. As I said, if you read the rules, it has some wonderful background that goes on with it. I would strongly suggest doing that. But if you've played these multiple player dudes on a map type games, you're going to have a lot of the same feelings, a lot of the same reactions as the game plays out. And I think you'll, if you like those types of games, this is definitely a genre. This is definitely that epic space game that I have been looking for, that I haven't really found. There's lots of space games out there that I really enjoy, but some of them are too much 4X, some of them are too much of a spreadsheet game, but I just want a game like this where I can just build up my planets, I can build up my units, and I can just go and blast people to atoms and have a lot of fun. And this is definitely one of those games that does that. Well, let me talk about that and a whole lot more in my final thoughts. All right, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to the how-to, or like how the game progresses type of thing. I engage you to, if you like, go to the Overbattle website. Rob has done a fantastic bit of world building there if you want to dive even deeper into the game. And if you go to the Kickstarter page, there's plenty of other videos from other videographers like myself who kind of go into it as well, and just check it out. Now, I mean, two things. I think there's going to be kind of two groups of people that are going to really enjoy this game. If they're a gamer of a certain age, I'm 48 years old, so if you're a gamer of a certain age, and you have kind of that memory of that old school game, that thing that you loved back in the day, and you're looking for some new page, some new turn the page and play a new version of that, this is definitely something I think you need to own. You have to have this on your shelf. This is something that has you can play it as an epically long, full Saturday type of game. You can play a quick little skirmish type game. It has, as I said, the modularity of the game is there in all these different options you can go with. But you are going to you're going to have wonderful memories of the past, right? Of those games you played with your high school friends, your college friends, and you're going to have those recollections. And this is a game of epicness and a game of moments, if you will. And I'll get back to that put that moment, put a pin in that. We'll come right back to it. The second type of person I think that might really, really like this game is somebody that probably has heard of these buckets of dice type games. You know, like games like Titan, where you would just end up rolling tons of dice and you know, figuring out who wins that monumental battle. But maybe you just haven't found one that fits the genre that you're looking for. Or maybe you haven't found the one that like doesn't have downtime or like the game begins. I mean, the setup of the game is actually playing the game. I mean, the choices you make are monumental. Like you can flat your planet right down there in the middle of the board and just say, come at me, and just be that. Or you can like kind of try to be off into the corner and trying to like, you know, hide a little bit and maybe just build up a good defense before you actually rattle your saber and head out into the great unknown. I mean, there's so many different ways the game can be played that each session is going to have its own remarkable moments that you're going to remember. And this is, I have games of those old Game Master series games. I have games of Fortress of America that I remember to this day, and we still talk about with my friends about like the sessions of that. And this is the type of game that creates those. I mentioned Fortress of America. I remember when you play Fortress of America, now this is just the way we played it. I was just reminded of that game a lot with this one because of the fact that you kind of had you had America that needed to defend itself, right? And then you had the three invading forces. And ostensibly, those three invading forces worked together, but like there were different variants that like only one would be like the supreme winner kind of thing. And you might end up in situations where, and I don't think this is supposed to be done in the rules, but we'd end up fighting each other, like the invading forces. But I do remember that the whole thing that America needed to do in that game to win was they had to hold out. They had to last because of the fact that they had all the reinforcements in the world coming, and they just needed to wait out the other players, and because their resources were finite. Eventually, they just wouldn't be able to restock, and that kind of reminds me, in a weird way, a little bit of The Sin, because of the fact that like they start off kind of meek, but the game itself kind of pushes them into a situation where they aren't getting affected by the other players, right? I mean, the combats they get into, they're the ones that live. And so the other players are expending this cash and expending these reinforcements, doing it while the Sin just continue to build, and they build, and they build, and they build, right? And it's like all of a sudden, boom, now it's on, right? And they are like this monumental force. And I just kind of like, it's kind of in a weird way, it reminded me of Fortress of America a lot. Now, I mean, maybe I'm just off my rocker on that one, but I definitely drew a parallel between the two. Ultimately, this game's fantastic. I love big long epic games, and I love the shorter games. I love both of them. I did play this a few times before everybody's been stuck at home, and I'm glad I was able to play it. I did play it 2-player game with my daughter just the other day, just to kind of refresh myself in the game and get myself, you know, dug into it, which, you know, we had a great deal of fun as well. She won, of course, because she always beats me at everything, but it's one of those things where it does work with a large number of people or a short number of people, and each way you play it is in its own way presents itself with a unique challenge, which, you know, changes up the tactics and the strategies you have to use. So there you go. That is Overbattle the All War. I strongly suggest, like I said, if you're like me, a gamer of a certain age, this is something you're going to want to check out. If you have any questions about the game, by all means, ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I really, really appreciate it. Be safe, be healthy, you know, just stay home, play lots of games. We'll eventually get out of this and everything will be okay, right? We'll watch this video years from now and we're like, oh yeah, I remember that, you know, that time. But just remember, be the best version of you possibly can be. The more love you give the universe, I guarantee you the universe is going to give you more love back. Until next time, take care.